All right, it's recording now. Okay. Thank you, Barbara, for letting me know that. Okay, we'll go around and introduce ourselves. So just basically, you may know each other, you may not, but just for our purposes tonight, just introduce your name, what church you go to, and what is your responsibility, what committee or division. And I'll start with Peggy, and I'll take you around for interest of time. I'll take you around the screen here. Peggy.
Okay, well, I'm Peggy Ferguson, and I am at the Pinola Presbyterian Church. I do the music, lead a ladies group Bible study, help with the children's programs, and anything else they can find me to do, I usually do it. And I've been living in this area 16 years and been working on something in the Presbyterian committee for at least 10 years. So some committee chair or something, I've just been there. It's hard for me to say no. So.
You know, I like to say no is a complete sentence, but I'm glad you're saying yes. That's good. That's good. Barbara.
Well, I'm Barbara Ross. I'm on Presbyterian staff. I'm a member of Crossnor Presbyterian, and I'm serving as pulpit supply at Little Siloam Church in McDowell County, which has absolutely been one of the most rewarding things I've done lately. I'm here as a staff person. I'm not chairing any committee right now. I serve ex officio on several as in my role as a Presbyterian staff member. So I'm glad to be a part of this group tonight.
All right, thank you, Billy.
Hi, I'm Billy Robinson. I think I know everybody on this call, gratefully. I'm glad you're here. I am a staff to a lot of these committees, and I think we'll talk about that a little more in detail later. I bet a lot of your questions are going to be committee specific, so shoot me an email and we'll get a time to talk by phone or converse back and forth. But thanks for making the time to be here tonight. I appreciate it.
Charles.
I'm a member of First Pres Belmont for 2+ years now. I've been serving on the finance committee for many years, and I'm currently serving as chair of the finance committee, and as also the admin administration. And as a result of that, I'm serving on the council. I have been for several years.
All right, Bob Forsyth.
I'm Bob Forsyth. I'm a member of Trinity Presbyterian Church, and I serve as the chair of the examination subcommittee of Committee on Ministry, and I also serve as the parliamentarian for the Presbyterian.
All right, Sarah Grace.
Sorry, my child just walked in. I am Sarah Grace Montgomery. I am the co-chair of the youth committee, and I live in Brevard, currently serving part-time with Warren Wilson Presbyterian Church.
Hal.
Okay, there it is. I'm Hal Bennett. I think I know everyone who I can see. I am the pastor, teaching elder at Dulutown Presbyterian Church. I've been there 9.5 years, currently serving as the moderator of General Counsel.
Cam.
I'm Cam Murchison. I serve as state clerk of the Presbytery, and I depend on most of you to do my work.
My colleague from New Hope, I followed Stephen Ashman here. So we were in New Hope, same as Connie. We were all in New Hope. Now we're all in West North Carolina. So Steve, I'll go with you.
It's not a takeover. Yes, so I've lived here 3 or 4 years in the Presbytery, and I'm retired. I'm chairman of the mission committee. I've served on the mission committee for a few years, and now will be chairman.
All righty, Connie.
I'm Connie Button, and I'm retired also. And I've been in Western North Carolina about 5 years and live in Black Mountain and attend Black Mountain Church. I am the chair of personnel this year. I have served on that committee for a couple of years already. So I'm here to learn whatever I can.
All right, Robin Honeycutt.
Hey, good evening. I'm Robin Honeycutt. I am one of the commission co-pastors at Sweetwater and serving on as the chair of the small church committee.
Sue Johnson. You're on mute, Sue.
Sorry. I'm Sue Johnson. I'm currently an elder at First Presbyterian in Belmont, along with Charles, who's coming on the session now. I've been there about 8 years. I'm the chair. I'm the Mission and Outreach Division Chair on General Counsel. Is that right, Billy?
Division chairs, and hopefully we'll go over kind of an org chart later. Yep.
Okay.
Dwight.
I'm Dwight Christenbury. I'm associate at Trinity in Hendersonville. I am chair of the CPM, and for fun, I am an adult advisor with the Presbyterian Youth Council.
Dot.
I'm Dot this year. I was formerly a member at Westminster, Nashville, and we closed that church. I think it's been 6 years ago now. And now I'm a member at Kenilworth in Asheville. I have been on, I don't know how many committees on the Presbyterian level and 2 or 3 on the Synod level. And I'm currently the Synod Elder Commissioner. And because of that, I'm on General Counsel.
All right, thanks, Dot. And last but not least, John Hagman.
Hey, everybody. John Hagman. I'm the pastor at FPC Morganton. I am the Leadership Division Chair and a member of General Counsel. And I serve on a number of other committees at the Presbyterian level as well.
All right. Well, thank y'all once again for taking a part of this training, especially this time of evening that you've had to spend away from your family, friends, or loved ones, or if you just don't have anybody from the TV. So I'm just thankful that you are here. Let me tell you the purpose of why we're here this evening. When I arrived here about 16 months ago as of today, I had the opportunity to speak to the leaders of this presbytery, not only the leaders in General Counsel, but also in some of our other committees. And there were a lot of people who told me, you know, we used to do training here in this presbytery. We need to do this again for division leaders and committee chairs. I was also surprised at the number of people who had no clue about the presbytery, the structure of the presbytery. And be honest with you, some of you know people, if not yourself, who all of a sudden you've been called, or you're going to be the next chair of this particular committee, and probably had no idea what the heck was going on. Because of course, if you were on it, you weren't paying attention if you weren't the chair. So this is just a basic training this evening. And there's 3 purposes. Number 1, for you to get to know each other. Because we do believe as we talk about being in this presbytery, we're talking about foreign mission and relationships. And we can't do that if we don't have the opportunity to support and be with one another. Because in some way, all of you are in the same boat in a way. Number 2 is to learn a little bit about the presbytery. Learn about the structure, learn about what we do as a staff, what you do as a division. How many of you know what committee or division your committee is a part of? Raise your hand. Okay. So we will go over that just a little bit in a second for you to know about the presbytery, because you are leaders here in this presbytery. You are taking on the responsibility according to our standing rules. And I think it's incumbent upon you to at least know what our presbytery is all about, its structure and what we believe and what our mission statement as you go forth, because you are a communicator to those that you are with in your particular committee. And number 3 is to give you strength and to support you as a leader. The things that you will hear tonight may not be anything different from what you've heard before. For some of you, it may be a refresher. For some of you, it may be something new. I do want to let you know, by the way, that if you want to take notes, you can, but if you don't want to, that's fine, because each of the leaders have given me, if I don't already have it itself, we're going to put all these resources in a folder this evening, and I'm going to give this to you as a toolbox as you go forth. So, and I just want you to know about that as well. So, but all of us can learn to be a better leader. All of us may not know Robert's Rules of Order. We may not know how to start our meetings well. You have to take minutes. There's a lot of things that we have to take on, and this is a basic refresher for you to know this, and hopefully this will equip you as you go forth in your leadership roles. So those are the 3 purposes that we have this evening for this time together. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Well, I want to start out with our mission statement here in the presbytery and our overall structure. So give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen with you. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
All right. This is just our general structure that came about 6-7 years ago. We are the body of Christ. Our mission statement is strengthening congregations, equipping disciples, and engaging in mission. We do that in a variety of ways. Hold on, let me move all of you out the way so I can do this. And we are structured in 6 divisions. General Counsel is there at the top. General Counsel carries out the work and mission and ministry of the presbytery, but the work also goes to the 6 divisions: ministry, administration, congregational development, leadership development, youth, and outreach, mission, and development. And you see there the committees that are underneath each one of these. You also see at the bottom, there's a line on the right-hand side, on the right-hand side of that box leading down to the bottom, which is General Counsel not only has responsibility for the ministries of those 6 divisions, but also affiliate organizations serving within the presbytery, Presbyterian Women and Camp Greer. And so this is the basic structure of who we are and what we do and how we continue our work. I do want to let you know that right now we have a revisioning task force that met today. As a matter of fact, it's our 3rd meeting, and we're going to be looking at, is this the structure we want to continue being as we go forth in our lives? So things may change. It changed back in 2015 or so to the present structure that we have now. And I hope that you have a chance to see not only tonight where your committee is and whatever division that you're in, but also to know each of your division leaders. For all 6 of those have a division leader. You heard from Sue tonight. You also heard from John Hagman, and you will hear about others this evening as well. Not only are there committee chairs here, they're also division leaders. And we'll talk a little bit about that this evening as we go forth. So I want to show you the structure of our presbytery and where the committees are within the structure, how General Counsel, by the arrows you see there, relate to the different divisions and some of the affiliate organizations here within the presbytery as well. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And so there we are. And again, I will send this to you as we go forth after this meeting today. So you'll have a representation of that to remember that as we go forth. First, we'll start with Barbara. Barbara is going to talk to us this evening about how to start off well in your committee. So I'll turn the floor over to her.
Okay, thank you, Byron. Well, I'm going to make an assumption, and one is that you each are serving as chair of a committee. So that's the premise on which we're going to start this discussion. And as chair of that committee, when you find out that somebody is appointed or elected to that committee, I hope that you will be calling that person or making contact with that person right away to welcome them to your committee. Let them know who you are. You might know the person already on a personal level, but not in this relationship, not establishing this committee service relationship. So it's important that you make that contact. And then as you do that, and as you have your first meeting, you start getting to know each person on your committee. And you do that by just going around the room, asking people to introduce themselves. It's always a good idea to have tent cards available, because you may think that everybody knows everybody else, but not necessarily. But a good way to establish that initial understanding and relationship is to have each person introduce another person. Pair people off and have them interview their partner and then introduce that partner to the group. That means everybody's got to have a little bit of time. That takes some time, but that's one really good way to establish relationships and help people get to know one another. You can ask them to talk about what they do in their particular congregation, what brings them joy, what joyful thing can they see or did they see on the way to this meeting. That's, of course, if we're meeting in person. If we're meeting by Zoom, then, you know, what did you see happen today that brought you joy or that you see God's hand in? A way to get to know people. And it's your job as the chair of the committee or the group to help to facilitate that, to make that happen, because it's probably not going to happen otherwise. And as we are so time conscious, one of the things that we sometimes forget to do is spend time with one another, because we're in this time frame. We've got to have this meeting and it's got to be over. I mean, you'd think there's a law that says we can't meet for more than 2 hours ever. Well, that's a general rule of thumb. That's always good, because my philosophy is that the brain can only absorb what the fanny can endure. So we can't sit too long, obviously, and listen to people talk or to a person talk. So getting the group comfortable, establishing some relationships is really, really important. And then as you're doing that, then you're beginning to get a feel for what an individual person's strength might be as he or she is able to contribute to what's going to be going on in this committee work. In addition, Byron, Byron just mentioned something about you don't have to know or be an expert on Robert's Rules of Order. There is a reason for using Robert's Rules of Order, and it just simply is helping the meeting to flow and understanding how to get things done. And there's a very brief booklet or book, Robert's Rules of Order in brief. It's not the full unabridged one. And there are single page charts that you can always refer to help you understand how that process works. It's fairly simple in that the chair of the organization, the chair of the committee, along with a secretary who has to be appointed, and I think Billy's going to talk about those roles in the meeting. Somebody else is going to be talking about that. To work through an agenda, you always have to have an agenda. And as you look at that agenda, then people that have things to talk about will find the right time to mention those things, we hope. A minor point in all of those discussions is that as the chairperson, you need to help people understand that if they have something to contribute, they need to contribute to everybody and not have side conversations going on, which are very distracting to the total meeting and to what's being discussed. Also, if there's crosstalk, if two people are talking at the same time, nobody can hear either one. That's sometimes really tough for a chairperson to manage, because you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but at the same time, you have to maintain some decorum and some order in your meeting. Otherwise, you can't get things accomplished. And that's one of the most difficult things that chairpersons sometimes have to do, but very important. And then as you talk about and introduce people and get established, Then you have to talk about the purpose of the meeting, just as Byron did for us. What's the meeting designed to do? What's your objective? What's the reporting relationship? Who is this committee working for? Or what is this committee working toward? And get buy-in from everybody that they understand what the purpose of the committee is. Because if you're at cross purposes, nothing is going to happen. And the only way you can understand that is to talk about it and have an understanding right up front of what's going to be going on in that committee. In addition to all of that, then one of the things that you always have to do is remember what our overall objective is for this presbytery. And we all have to function on committees to make that happen. And going forward, that's a part of that reporting or establishing the relationship of your committee to the division or to the presbytery. And Byron showed you the chart with the divisions on it. We each have some responsibility beyond the committee that we're working with or working on. It's only the presbytery that doesn't have that. And of course, presbytery does to Senate and GA, of course, but we as committee persons ultimately have to report to somebody at another level, a council group or something. And there's always got to be some definition of what the expectation of this committee is. Otherwise, how are you going to report your successes, or how are you going to report what you're doing? As you do that, then you've got to get everybody's buy-in. And sometimes that's tough, especially if it's a big committee. I don't know what the largest committee size is that we have, but if you've got 10 or less, it's a much easier group to work with, obviously, than if you've got a much larger group than that. So going forward, size of a committee is really important. And that's one of the things that you as the chairperson need to have an understanding about. And if you've got too many, then talk to somebody on presbytery staff about the size of that committee. Is it too little? Is it too big? Are you having trouble accomplishing your objective because of the size of the committee? Are you getting good input from people? Are people responding to your questions? Are people responding to discussions? All of those things are an important piece of managing your committee and its work. All of that comes right back down to helping to establish relationships on the committee, because if people don't feel comfortable talking to each other, they're not going to make contributions, or they're not going to ask questions, or they're not going to disagree. And obviously there's a way to disagree that's important. And if you have to disagree, or somebody on the committee needs to disagree with somebody, then the chair's got to sort of manage through that to make sure it doesn't become a free-for-all. Not that any of us Presbyterians would let that happen, however, but nevertheless, the chair has got to be sure that it doesn't happen. In addition to serving as a chairperson, there's a responsibility for helping somebody to report what's going on. And generally that's got to be a secretary. And the chairperson and the secretary usually have to work in conjunction with one another, A, to establish the agenda, and then B, to report what happened. And you might think that if you've got a really small committee, you don't have to do that, but you really do, because every committee makes decisions about their work that sometimes has to be reported to somebody, or they have to be able to remember that. They have to be able to say to one another, oh, we made that decision at the last meeting. We don't need to redo that, or we don't need to revisit that. So that's an important piece of running and establishing some guidelines to help your committee function as it goes forward. In addition to always trying to keep the meeting moving, as Byron pointed out, right at 7 o'clock on the dot, it's time to start this meeting. Try to start meetings at the appointed hour and end them at the appointed hour. If you have somebody that's coming to the meeting habitually late, what do? You try to talk to that person and ask that person if they can make arrangements to be on time, because it's disruptive if they're unable to be there and have to come in midway or at some point later. In addition to that, if you hold starting a meeting until one person arrives, you're doing a disservice to the other people on the committee who arrived on time. And for some of you, and I can see some of you shaking your heads, yes, you agree with that. It's an important piece of the business of the committee, because if people don't respect the time frame, then it's hard to get things done effectively, because people coming in and out at different times is a real disruption. So those are kinds of tough conversations that a chairperson may have to have with a member of a committee to try to encourage that person to be on time, to be able to be a part of the total business of the committee. And that means being able to be there for all of the discussions. One of the things that's always important to establish right up front is how many times we're going to meet, what the meeting schedule is going to be, establish calendars. And it's as you make these initial contacts about your first meeting, suggest that people bring their calendars with them. Well, I'm still a dinosaur. I still use a paper and pencil kind of a calendar. Most everybody else that I know uses a phone or the computer or something to keep their calendar. And because I'm such a dinosaur, you don't have anything up on the screen from me tonight. I don't know how to do that. But ask people to bring their calendars to the meeting so everybody can look at when the next meeting is going to be. If you're trying to establish the meeting time, then you also then have to think about how to do that, or potentially how to do that online. You know, there are scheduling programs and things like that to get people to sign up for a meeting time. And so establishing all of that is really important. And that's a part of the chairperson's job, because if you don't take that on, certainly nobody else is going to. And then I guess the primary thing that I want to make sure that we all understand, and that is that we give thanks to everybody that serves on a committee. And as chairperson, if you have time, it's always nice to write people a note and thank them for their service. When the minutes go out, thank them for being at the meeting. We don't do nearly enough of that. We don't do nearly enough of initial contact with people when they get appointed to a committee. And this is a rhetorical question. How many of you have ever been asked to serve on a committee and been told, well, you only meet about 2 or 3 times a year, you won't have to do anything? That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that, but don't be guilty of saying that to somebody if you're committee chair, because that's a part of understanding the purpose of your committee and helping everybody that comes on the committee to understand what that purpose is, and reward them in some way for being a part of that committee. And I don't know about you all, but I like to reward people with brownies. I like to take brownies to committee meetings, and that's hard to do now on Zoom. Drives the people that work with me crazy because they don't get my brownies anymore. And I do a lot of PNC training, and I tell them I reward good behavior at PNC training meetings with brownies. So bribe them if you have to. I will be so grateful when we get back to in-person meetings. I love the idea of Zoom. I think it's phenomenal. For Peggy and I, we've been iced in for 3 weeks now or so, and it's been hard to get out of my driveway, and I know where she lives. It's hard to get out of hers too. And so Zoom meetings are great. They allow you to be at home, but at the same time, being the extrovert that I am, I like being face to face and talking to people. So I'll be really glad to get back to that point. But as a committee chair, please take advantage of every opportunity that you can to thank the people on your committee, to always welcome them, and to reward them when you can. And sometimes reward is just a little thank you note for their contributions at the meeting. And then just remind them how grateful you are and how grateful the presbytery is for their service on this committee. We typically don't do nearly enough of that. So as a committee chairperson, I encourage you to take that extra moment to do that as you work with your committee persons and welcome them into the fold, so to speak. And then try to always get the secretary, or if it happens to be you, to send out minutes of the meeting in advance of the next meeting so they can see what was discussed, what was decided, and have a chance to think about that. And if at all possible, an agenda before the meeting. So are there questions before I close? Or comments? Yes, Sarah Grace. Unmute.
Yeah, my question just has to do with how we know who our new members are without having to like chase that down from someone in the office. And so like I know the nominating committee is doing what the best it can right now, but like I've chaired youth. This is not my first year chairing the youth committee, and just sometimes it's hard to know who those new members are and how to contact them, since that's the nominating committee's work. Like we're not the ones asking people to serve on our committees. We're giving the nominating committee suggestions, but so I don't know if this is really a question or a comment, but I have found that it's challenging to get that list of people of who we need to be contacting. And then additionally, if like the nominating committee would be getting does the nominating committee get any kind of training like this as well? So that then when they're asking people to serve, they're able to tell them things like, not things like they only meet twice a year, or the youth committee is the most fun, which it is. I mean, being on that committee is a reward in itself, but yeah, so those are kind of my comment questions that I have.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sarah Grace. Let me just say this, that the nominating committee presents a slate of nominees at Presbyterian meeting, which is acted on, and that goes into Presbyterian minutes. However, I don't know that there's a formula or there's a process, a formal process by which we take advantage of the opportunity to make those contacts and let people know. I will make a note to talk about that at our next Presbyterian staff meeting and see what we do, because I really don't know exactly what we do. Cam or Billy or Byron may be able to answer that. Hal's got his hand up. I'll just a second, Hal. We may have a process in place, but we may not. And so I think your point is very valid in that, again, we always don't do as good a job as we should about making those contacts. So I'll see what I can find out about that, Sarah Grace, but thank you for your comment.
Right, and not just the names, but like contact information. So for minister members, that's easy for me to find. But I know last year we had an elder member that it took forever to get any kind of contact information for them. That's all.
Okay. Thank you so much for that observation and that comment, Sarah Grace. I don't know if Cam or Billy may be touching on that in their presentations or not, but I will put it on my notes to talk about it at staff meeting. Hal, you had something to comment? You wanted to comment?
No, I was just going to say that Sarah Grace, you can ask Tanya for a list of all of the people who are serving on committees. And on that list, you will have their telephone number and their address. So that should be readily available if you are chair to of a committee. You should have that information available. If not, I will make sure you get it.
That's available in an ideal world. However, I'm not sure at this red hot minute, all that information has been consolidated. It is true that at least 3 meetings a year, the nominating committee reports and presents nominees, but that's just the name and the church they're from and so on. And that doesn't have all the contact information, but Peggy's here, so we can talk in nominating committee about as we make those nominations to be sure and pass that information to the relevant chairs of committees.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Hal.
When I've asked people, and someone has agreed to serve on a committee, and this is from the Christian Education Committee, we didn't really do that much, or I didn't on that. I had other things to do, but on the nominating committee, what we have been doing, and I've been like Byron, I'm not sure how we've been handling it. It's the best way, but I don't know the best way. So, but we contact people, and if they agree, then we submit their name like to be approved by at the Presbytery meetings. But we also ask for their information, their address, their email, their cell phone, or however they communicate. And that's for what we get, but when you get your report out, it doesn't necessarily show all that. So that's something that it would take a lot of paperwork, but it's something that really need to be done. Because I mean, I'm getting ready to be the chairperson of the nominating committee, and I don't know all the names and addresses of everybody that serves on it. So,
Right. Thank you, Peggy. Billy, were you going to make a comment?
Yeah, Jill, I saw sends her apology. She had a death that she had to attend to, and so I will touch base with her and we'll make this recording available. A couple of thoughts. One, as a staff person to most of these committees, I try to meet with the chairperson before the first meeting, and we'll go over the list of members of these committees. We typically have good contact information. However, we've had some folks, and to kind of stereotype, it's usually folks who don't do email very well. And that's our primary source of contact. And we've had this one lady who's not native to online, and she doesn't do email very well, or she doesn't check it, or the person who helps it with her changes her email 3 times, her email address 3 times within a calendar year. And so it's just an issue of garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have accurate contact information, sometimes we are just at a loss. But Sarah Grace, my first response to your question is, yes, it can be a problem. I would go to the staff person who staffs your committee. In most instances, it's either going to be me or Tanya, and you should know that by now.
Thank you, Billy. Are there any other questions or comments before I turn it back over to Byron?
I have a comment. I ran into the same thing that Sarah Grace did, and I called Tanya. She didn't have it all readily available, but the thing was that I had some people who had been on my committee, the personnel committee already, and they wanted to know when the meetings were going to be for this year, or who was on the committee, or, several things like that. And I said, I don't know. And so then I tried to find out, and I did. This was right after the first of the year. And I know we hadn't had Presbyterian and all that sort of thing, but people had agreed to serve. And I guess, Peggy, that's once they say yes, that they will, that Presbyterian is going to say, okay. So, but anyway, I would hope also that there would be some format for somebody responsible for getting that out. And of course, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I'd be in favor of finding somebody to get it out, because I didn't know. Even though I'd been on the committee for 2 years, there was some change, and I just didn't know who was on the committee. And I think everybody on the committee ought to have a list of the committee members, so that would help them should they be asked to chair, then they would know who's in which class or whatever. And so then that you could sort of by elimination figure out who's, anyway, we're going to work on that. Good. And Tanya was my savior.
Bear in mind that the
is.
Presbyterian directory does have that information when it gets compiled, but it hasn't been compiled for 2022 yet.
For personnel, it had been.
Yeah, we obviously have some work to do.
The directory for 2022 hasn't been published yet, and therefore that information isn't yet generally available to everybody to see. But I understand what the chairs are saying, and there's no reason that we can't regularly keep chairs apprised of who's been elected to what classes of their committees, so they have that information on an ongoing way.
That would be very helpful,
Yes,
thank you so much. Anybody else have a comment?
Anybody else have a comment for Barbara? As you see, there are some things that we need to work out here. And so we will continue to work on those. So we'll make sure we have a straight line of communication. Barbara gave you some very,
Thank you
very
for
good.
your participation.
Oh, thank you, Barbara. A couple other things I wanted to add to Barbara's presentation. Many of you know that because of COVID, we're trying to make transitions, whether it be in person or online using Zoom for the most part. So your committee chairs will be probably discussing, how you're going to meet for the rest of the year or even going forward. A couple of tips I want to give you if you're going to meet online. Unlike me, make sure that everybody has their correct name on the screen. So I am not Presbyterian WNC, I am Byron Wade. So that'll be helpful, especially for newer members who are part of your committees. So number one, I would say also to me, my own personal thing is I'd like to make sure that people have either earbuds or headphones just to keep out the background noise. I mean, there are many things that are going on within our lives and there's many distractions and things of that nature. And some of those things are needed depending on where we are, but to make sure that people are focused in. And if you have anything that you want to share during your meetings as chairpersons, to have it readily available. So everything that I'm going to show you, already have it, it's up already, it's just behind the screen. So you have to sit there and just look for it in all of your files. And so some of those things are very helpful. And you'll also have to figure out what is the traffic going on. If someone wants to raise their hand here and someone wants to talk here, how do you determine who goes first and things of that nature? And that comes naturally with experience. And some of you may want to have a system of how you navigate that as you're having conversations within your committees. So those are just a few of the tips I would like to offer to you that you think about in your toolbox as you go forward. Next, we will go to Billy, and Billy's going to be talking about meeting basics, communications, and financial needs. So I'll turn it to Billy.
I'm going to start off by saying I'm having technical difficulties. I'm going to try Byron's suggestion of the headphones, and I'm going to ask for y'all to do me the favor, and it may backfire, but if my feed's coming in and out, can you text me that it's coming in and out? And if need be, I may have to turn off the video and only use audio. Does that? Okay. While I'm plugging in, I will say that I'm a how's this? Can y'all hear me now? Excellent. I'm going to say I'm self-taught fly fisherman, which means I've had the worst fly fishing teacher ever. And it's the same with meetings and leading meetings. And I realize that the gathered wisdom in front of me is greater than anything I have on my own. So if you have some resources or some tips, please feel free to email that to me, and we'll include it in the file that Byron is gathering together. The wisdom of the group is always going to be greater than any one individual. And I'm going to regret saying this, but if you have questions for the larger group while I'm talking, put it in the chat to everyone, and then hopefully sometime soon we can get those questions answered. I'm not gonna guarantee we'll get to them tonight because I want to honor your time. Barbara's done a thorough job, and I apologize ahead of time if I'm going to touch base on some of the things she's already said, and I will try to go at a pretty quick clip. I'm going to approach this the way I approach my kids, because I'm still got some kids in the house, and they always ask, do we have to? Do we gotta? And so we're talking about meetings, and the question a lot of people is, do we have to have a meeting? And if you just Google the meme, this meeting could have been an email, you will see like just tons of images where people are wrestling with this problem of a plethora of meetings that probably could have been, or maybe should have been, an email. And so a lot of your committee members, or maybe even yourself as a committee chair, are asking, do we have to have a meeting at all? Can we not just communicate a lot of this by email? And I'm going to answer that question the same way I answer my kids, yes. And then they answer why, and I'm going to say because I said so. And let me walk through those points real quick. The short answer is yes, we have to have meetings. And one of the reasons why, the why behind it, is because we are trying to fulfill the mission of the presbytery. And it's not the staff and it's not the council. It's this gathered covenantal body of the presbytery. The presbytery itself is trying to fulfill its mission to Jesus Christ, to serve Christ. So the council has discerned this mission statement and this direction for the committees. And I'm going to do something in the chat box. The council has, it's hard to find, and that's why I'm putting it in the chat box, but there's documents on our website, and you have to kind of go hunting for them that kind of describe what your committee's mission is, specific mission, and it's there to guide the work together. And there's usually no other way to do that work other than to get together in a meeting or two or more. Meetings are simply the tool that we have to advance the mission of the presbytery. And then the question might be, well, how often do we have to meet? If we have to have meetings to advance the mission that we've been given, how often do we have to meet? How many are necessary? That description also has a description about how many times you meet. I have found over the past almost 6 years now that most committees that I serve meet about 5 times a year. Every other month, and some committees in one division meet on even months, and the committees of another division meet on odd months. And that's simply so I can be there. I can't be in 2 places at one time. So every other month, we typically skip December, and we typically skip July, just because of attendance is hard to get. And so if you don't know when you're meeting, talk to me. A lot of that has already been planned out for a lot of these committees. I will tell you that a lot of the committees prefer to meet by Zoom. We are tending to get a little better attendance. I'm not sure we're getting better participation. That's yet to be determined. More people are able to attend. It's easier for them not to have to drive 2 or 3 hours to and from a meeting. I'm not sure we're always getting the best participation. It seems like sometimes it's a few voices that are speaking up, and some other people are just kind of tuning in and tuning out. Part of whether you decide to meet in person or in Zoom is going to depend on the purpose of the meeting. Brainstorming is near impossible to do by Zoom. You almost will have to have it in person. Excuse me while I look at some notes I want to talk about. So we have the rationale. Why do we have meetings? Well, the rationale is to push the mission of the committee forward. Not just the mission of the committee, but the mission of the presbytery, the mission to be disciples of Jesus Christ forward. The meeting is the means to do that. And then what are the tools? Oh, golly, I need to say one more thing. Another reason, one of the tools is to have an agenda. You just don't get together and meet, and and you may be surprised, but we have lots of committees that just get together, and they kind of get together and say, well, let's form an agenda. And an hour and a half later, you formed an agenda for the next time you meet, which will be in a month. And so I want you to be aware that an agenda helps keep the committee from having what I call mission creep. And it's kind of slowly creeping away from what your mission is. I'm trying to give you an example without calling out names. There is a committee that everybody wants to serve on because they assume it only meets twice a year, even though it says in the handbook, no, you're going to meet 5 times a year. And they only meet 2 times a year because they haven't read their full mission statement. And they're only focusing on a very narrow portion of their mission as a committee. And every time I sit down with the chairperson and say, no, you're doing a great job on this one thing, but what about these 5 others? Their eyes get really wide, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that's what I signed up to do. And so Be aware of mission creep away from what your stated mission is. It's kind of like the path of least resistance leads towards perdition in the terms of some of these committees. One of the tools that's going to help you to keep on track and keep away from mission creep is the agenda. You got to have a meeting agenda. The question then goes, well, how do I set the agenda for a committee that I'm new to or have not been on very long? And the first response I'm going to say is talk to the Presbyterian staff. That's what we're there for. Each committee has a staff person. And one of the main purpose, in my understanding, for the staff person is kind of continuity. Every year, the committee personnel changes. And sometimes the committee chairs change. And the continuity typically is going to be that staff person to kind of say, look, this is where the minutes are from the last meeting. This is what we've done in the past. This is kind of where we're going in the future. That staff person also acts as the conduit between your committee and counsel, who kind of oversees the greater mission of the presbytery in your committee. So after you talk to your staff person about setting an agenda, the next best place to go, or maybe even the first place to go, would be the previous chair. It seems obvious, but talk to the previous chair of the committee. Hey, what have you done? What did you want to get done? What's left undone? Where are you in the midst of this project or this endeavor? They'll help you set the agenda for your committee. Then the next obvious place is previous minutes. We're trying to set up a system where the minutes are housed on a shared drive that you have access to. If not, you can ask staff to pull up as many years back minutes as we have available. But read through those minutes if you have the time and see what where your committee is in the midst of its project, in the midst of its mission. Then after you come up with the draft agenda, the next obvious thing to do is send out a draft agenda to the committee. Say, hey, we're getting ready to have a meeting. This is the draft agenda. Is there anything to add? Is there anything that needs to be deleted and put off for another time? Once you have that draft agenda finalized, go ahead and send it out before your meeting. The next thing you want to do is determine who's going to keep the minutes of the meeting when you have it. I will tell you, some committees assume that the staff person is going to do it, and my response is, you may not want me to keep your minutes. That's not my gift. I keep horrible minutes, but more importantly, from my point of view, is I'm there to help you as a chairperson to keep the meeting on track. I have an article that I hope will go out. It's just kind of like how to run a meeting. It's just, when I say down and dirty, I mean down and dirty. I had to clean up some of the language for it. But it has some good pointers on just how do you keep a group of people on track and on the agenda. The person keeping the minutes is not going to be your best advocate to make sure that agenda is being pushed, because they're sitting there wondering, oh my gosh, so-and-so said so-and-so, and did I get that down right? And so if I'm the staff person trying to keep the minutes, I'm not going to be available to the chairperson to move the agenda. Does that make sense? So what is tending to work and where we're moving now is to have a chairperson, a vice chair, and sometimes that vice chair is the recording secretary. If not, then you need to elect a recording secretary, hopefully somebody who has gifts for the task. We're trying to implement a method where the chairperson rotates off and the vice chair becomes the chair. And then the chairperson who rotated off stays for the last of their 3-year term. We have had some committee chairs who have been chair people for over 6 years, and that has not been helpful. It really leads to that truncating of the mission of the committee, and we're trying to get away from that and introduce some vitality and some creativity. One of the questions you have is, after you find somebody to take the minutes, then what do you do with them? They need to be distributed. First, they need to be distributed to your committee for corrections or additions or deletions. you have a draft set of minutes, send them out to the committee, say, hey, this is what I got. Did I get this right? Any additions or corrections? Once you have a finalized minutes, they need to be distributed to a file that we can keep on file in case we need to refer to them, to a staff person. Usually that's going to be Tanya and or myself. Tanya most definitely, and if it's a committee I staff, please include me as well. And then they got to get the council. That's who we are accountable to. And so I copy the council chairperson, the council vice chair, and the division chairperson. Each committee reports to a division chairperson. Sue was saying that she was the division chairperson to council. So she gets minutes from Peace and Justice, Hunger Committee, the Mission Committee itself, and then she acts as the advocate and the conduit of information for those committees to council. I apologize if I'm trying to go too fast. So then the other thing that I prefer to keep in our meeting minutes is our budget and where are we in our budget. And so Lisa is pretty good to generate reports when asked. And so as a committee chairperson, help me remember to ask Lisa that we have those in front of us every time we meet. That's one of the things that has to be recorded in minutes is when you spend your allotted money. You got to have that recorded in the minutes, a motion, a second, and usually unanimity in passing that. Lisa needs that for her record keeping. She can't distribute any money without having that accountability and that paper trail thereafter. So let's say your committee has done its work. They've decided that they're going to have an event or an occasion or opportunity. The question usually comes up, how do we get that information out to the larger presbytery? I always say, does it need to go to the larger presbytery? First, identify your audience. You know, if your audience is redheaded, left-handed elders in Malin Fellowship, it doesn't need to go to the entire presbytery. You probably just need to direct that to those particular elders. And then the question then becomes, well, how do I direct that particular message to that particular audience? Right now, presently within the presbytery, we only have a few options available to you. The most popular has been an email, an e-blast. We have a master list. And we got some feedback from the presbytery that maybe that was being used too much. And so we're trying to limit that to a once a week, goes out on Friday. The prayer request goes out on Wednesday. Once a week email blast entitled What's Happening in Presbytery of Western North Carolina. That's probably the most popular way to get information out. The second would probably be the presbytery packet, but you got to remember that goes out 4 times a year. And you have to have that information in usually by the first week of the month in which the presbytery meets, if that makes sense. We have the presbytery website, which is becoming more and more useful. If your committee needs to get something on the presbytery website, the best way to do that is via staff, because we work with a webmaster, and so we kind of have to funnel things through the webmaster. I'm afraid if you contact the webmaster directly, you probably won't get through, just because they deal with their clients and their clientele. We have some targeted emails. We can target an email just to clerks of session. We can target an email just to pastors. We do have a Presbytery YouTube channel that's Byron is pretty diligent about posting towards, and we're trying to utilize that more and more. We do have Facebook pages that, to be honest, are not utilized adequately. And I would say I think there's some dark web Facebook groups out there that might be utilized. We have pastors who have a pastor group in a particular geographic part of the presbytery, and if we can become aware of those, then we could use them. Which brings to the last, and sometimes the most effective, is just word of mouth. If you have a particular event, and I'm picking on Gaston County because they have the Gaston Area Presbyterians Fellowship. It's pretty unique. It's easy to get some word out through that fellowship to those area congregations. And so utilize the networks within the clusters if your event or your opportunity is kind of narrowed to those groups. Is there a preferred deadline for the Friday email? Yes, there is, which I'm not aware of because I always go over it. I will tell you it's not Thursday. I usually try to get stuff no later than Monday to Tanya, who compiles that list. Oh, Cam just said Wednesday is preferred, but Thursday noon is probably absolute cutoff. I apologize. I'll try to go pretty quickly and not cover material that was already covered. And I know a lot of your questions are going to be pretty specific to your committee. So go ahead and email me, and we'll probably talk on phone and email back and forth. The short of it is, have an agenda. Don't feel like you got to set the agenda on your own. You have plenty of resources available to do that. Lean heavily on your staff. Staff, however, I will speak for myself. I get distracted by the next shiny object, and so feel free to pester if you're not getting the response you want or need. Don't be afraid to ask the previous chair. They're going to be a great resource for you. Got to have minutes. We got to have them for accountability and just to keep us on track. Several committees in the past have reinvented the wheel every year. And it's hard to get the mission of the Presbytery moving forward if we're reinventing the wheel every year. And so those minutes are helpful to record what has been done, where the committee has been moving, and where hopefully the committee will continue to move. Those minutes, because they are a function of accountability, need to be shared outside of your committee. They need to be shared with the council, and they need to be shared into a file for historical records in case we need to refer back to them. Budget, you do have a budget, and please use it wisely. And I'm going to stop talking because I think I've said plenty. Now, Byron, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Billy. Greatly appreciate it. I know Billy said if you have any questions, especially committee specific, to ask him. I'm going to ask any general questions for him. No? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Is there a form for authorizing money to send, or how do we get money distributed?
There's no form to my knowledge. And so the only forms that have been utilized have been for mileage reimbursement. That's the only form I'm aware of. So the minutes serves as the form to get money distributed. And that serves as the paper trail for Lisa. And so the committee, someone within the committee itself will ask for money to just, speaking of mission committee specific. So the mission committee wants to distribute money to one of our mission partners. That's recorded in its minutes. Those minutes go to council. Council, for lack of a better term, acts on that. Usually it's not an up or down vote. They just receive the request. And then that functions for as the authority that Lisa needs to distribute those funds and release those funds. I have found, and I hope, and I try to operate in other organizations, that the council trusts the committee to do the work that has been delegated to the committee. Rarely are they going to veto any request made by that committee. There does need to be accountability, and so that's the only reason. That's a main function of those minutes. Cam or Byron, did I speak out of turn on any of that, or something to add or correct?
No, but I might have about the weekly update. So Sarah Grace, don't take it to the bank that you can wait till Thursday noon.
Yeah, Tanya's not the person you want to get off the bad side. She keeps everything moving.
All right, well then I will turn it over to Cam, and Cam will talk about Presbyterian matters.
I'm going to try to do that. Byron asked me to talk a little bit about the work of the stated clerk, and I'm referring to a document that I will give to him that he can put into the toolkit for whatever it might be worth to you. But the work of the clerk is not completely unique to the work of the stated clerk. That is, the Book of Order describes a clerk for each council of the church. And as you know, each session has a clerk of session, and then each council beyond the session also has a clerk. And in the case of the synod and the presbytery, that person is called stated clerk. And the basic responsibility of the person who does the work of a clerk at whatever level is to be sure that good records are kept. And roles and all other kind of basic information about the work of the church is to be maintained. Another way to put it is, and this is the way our standing rules describe the work of the stated clerk. They say the clerk shall be elected by the presbytery and serve the presbytery as its constitutional officer. I guess the other thing you can say about a stated clerk's work or a clerk of sessions work is they are there by definition of the Constitution, not the particular person, but the office itself and the role that it undertakes. But there needs to be somebody in the life of presbytery who can either figure out or call on other resources to clarify any points of Presbyterian polity that may be at issue in the life of any congregation or any of the committees of the Presbytery that may be working. But all of that boils down to about 7 areas of work for the clerk in the Presbytery. One is arranging and preserving the minutes of Presbytery meetings and any other records of the presbytery. So that means, for example, that the clerk works with the general counsel to set the docket for each meeting of presbytery. Remember that the general counsel has people from a division chair, which each of your committees is related to in one way or another. So in that way, you all have a role in the arranging and setting the dockets of each presbytery meeting. This is the second thing that the clerk does is support the work of clerks of session. Some of you may have served as clerks of session in the past, and maybe some of you will be invited to do that in the future if you're really lucky. But the clerk, stated clerk of the presbytery organizes annual meetings with the clerks of session that does a review of the minutes as required by the Constitution, that the minutes of each session have to be reviewed. Truth be told, in this era of COVID, we have gone to a rather self-test approach. That is, we've sent out this checklist that we normally have do in face-to-face conversation with clerks from churches gathered together. And we asked each clerk to fill out their own checklists, certifying places where they have and have not been able to live up to the requirements of the Book of Order about various aspects of the session's work. I will have to say that most of our clerks are doing a better job that way than I did when I could grade my own tests in the 5th grade. I always made A's when I could grade my own tests, but I didn't always do as well when others graded them. Third thing, beyond supporting the clerks of session, that the clerk does is to simply be available to respond to constitutional, that is, Book of Order questions that arise in churches and that may arise in the work of your committee. A minor example, for example, what if your committee decided, hey, wouldn't it be great if we as a committee had communion together? Well, the question is, who would authorize the communion service that is held by a committee of the presbytery? Short answer to that is general counsel, but you need to make sure general counsel describes its annual approval of communion services in a way that encompasses the work of your committee. The fourth area of work is supporting the work of the general counsel. That's done by supporting and providing updates on administrative commissions that have been established by the Presbytery. That is, administrative commissions most often dealing with churches that have come to the conclusion of their ministry in one way or another, but sometimes because of more difficult circumstances that have arisen. Another way it supports the work of general counsel is by identifying the transitions that are underway in churches. Some of that information often comes back to some of your committees as information is relevant as you are involved in work that may try to support churches of one sort or another in particular ways. The fifth area is supporting the work of the Committee on Ministry, and that includes some of the same things as with General Counsel, but it also involves working as liaison with certain churches in their transitions, including helping with PNCs in some of those churches. The sixth and infrequently needed area of work by the clerk is with the Permanent Judicial Commission of the Presbytery. That is, when any matter of disciplinary process under the rules of discipline of our Book of Order come into play. It's the business of the clerk to oversee that process and make sure it's carried out with faithfulness to the stipulations of the rules of discipline. And finally, civil legal matters. Byron and I today had a brush with a civil legal matter. The reason the clerk has responsibility there is because as keeper of the records, the clerk can provide certified extracts from Presbytery records that are frequently needed in civil proceedings of one sort or another. Happily, they don't happen too often, but when they do, they're fairly time consuming. So that's a quick run at the work of the clerk in general. And most of that you probably didn't want to know, but you can, as I said, it'll be in your toolkit. And when you get bored with other things in your life, you can sit down and go over the work of the clerk and meditate on how wonderful it is that someone does that. The last thing I want to go to is a brief conversation about how the work of your committee might find its way onto the agenda of a Presbyterian meeting. As I've already mentioned, you will often have the occasion to report up in the way Billy described by sharing your minutes, among other things, with the division chair of your area. And if there are particular things that you and your committee have said, we need to make sure at the next meeting of Presbytery, this gets on the report, by all means, that's the way to do it, to pass it to that division chair who will make sure when we begin looking at the docket for the next Presbyterian meeting to look for a place for that matter. Now, frequently, there are matters of information. Typically, and this could vary, but typically, if you have a recommendation for something that needs to happen in the life of Presbytery, most typically that recommendation would go directly to the General Counsel, and General Counsel would most typically take action on that recommendation because it's authorized to act on behalf of Presbytery on matters that have some urgency between meetings of the Presbytery. So, for example, if there were, for the mission committee, there were a particular mission project that you wanted to get authorization to proceed with, it would be possible for General Counsel to take that action in authorizing it on behalf of Presbytery and simply report it at the next meeting. There may be from time to time when you bring things to General Counsel that where the urgency isn't so great, so General Counsel would simply suggest that perhaps that item you can simply make as part of your report and recommendation to Presbytery as a subset of the General Counsel report. Byron suggested we highlight what you should not report to Presbytery. And I think the things you should not report to Presbytery are how ineffective the staff have been in giving you help and how little support you got from us when we should have given you more. But otherwise, anything you think Presbytery ought to be advised of, feel free to advertise it to them. But Billy referred a moment ago to a chart that shows how things, the schedule for getting things reported to Presbytery. And I'll ask Byron to put that up on your screen so we can briefly review it. I'm trusting you can all see that. The dates in the left-hand column show, maybe we can make that a little bigger. Byron, you wanna hit Control plus and see if it gets a little bigger on the screen? Great, thank you, Byron. In the left-hand column, you have the date of a Presbytery meeting. Then the next column, you have the location of that meeting, whether it's virtual or whether it's in a particular church or location. Then the date of, the first date is what we call the packet deadline. And this is when any reports from any committees should be in the Presbytery office. That date is always the first Thursday of the month in which the Presbytery meeting is taking place. Staff needs as much help as you can give us on honoring those dates. Staff will give you every assistance it can in getting reports in by those dates, and it will do its best to provide a tad of grace if needed from time to time. But that, excuse me, that will allow us to get the objective here is to get the information in the packet out to Presbytery in a timely way. If your report requires a PowerPoint, this is more relevant when we were meeting face to face. We said we needed all those PowerPoints by the second Thursday of the month in which the Presbytery meets. These days, what we've had mainly is videos of one sort or another. And we have, because we've had a very flexible production crew for the creation of our Zoom Presbytery meetings and the videos within them, we've been able to work with a little more flexibility there. But once we're back to meeting face to face at least twice a year, and if there is a PowerPoint that you want as part of your report that has to be made ready on the location where we'll be meeting, those need to be in by that second Thursday. And then you see 3 to 5 days later, we always have the target for getting the packets available online and mailed out. So that's nuts and bolts of the way reporting needs to happen as it can in the work of the organizing the Presbytery meetings. So Byron, unless there are other questions about any of that, I think it's time to turn it back to you.
All right, are there any questions for Cam? My internet froze up for a minute, so I don't know if I had the right size. I think you had the right, it was big enough, right, Cam?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
I froze there for a minute.
You got it right. Yep.
Okay, good. Let me ask you, all of us have had the opportunity to present. Barbara, Billy, Cam, and myself, are there any questions that you have for any of us? Clear as mud, huh? Okay. Connie, go ahead.
Really have a question, but I want to commend you all for sharing all this information about the specifics of the presbytery. If you've done a meeting before, you know, you may know about some of the general things, but it's very helpful to get some diagrams and hear from all of you about how we can help presbytery further the mission. I mean, we're the presbytery, you know, so we want to make it right as well and help everybody else who is, why do we have to have a meeting, Billy? You know, because we're all in this together and we're trying to help move forward with it. So anyway, but thank you very much for putting all this together for us.
Do you mind if I take in my rush to present and try to do it timely, I'm afraid I rushed too much. And I think I've glossed over something I really wanted to emphasize is we typically try to be very efficient and very productive. And a lot of that comes from a good place of wanting to be good stewards of the time and gifts and talents of those serving on the committee. However, we're supposed to serve our Lord Jesus Christ and not the God of productivity and efficiency. And sometimes a meeting just needs to run long, or sometimes somebody just, that meeting is their only social outlet for a week or more. And so as much as I'm one of those who really wants some meeting to be efficient, I need to be reminded, and I think sometimes our committee members need to be reminded that we don't serve efficiency, we serve our Lord Jesus Christ, and sometimes it's not efficient. Right. So thanks for
humor
allowing me.
is often very good.
Thanks for giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
No problem. Just a few more things before we close in about 7 minutes. Presbytery staff, as was said before, each of us, Barbara, Billy, Cam, and I, as well as our other staff, both administrative and program, at certain cases, we are staff persons to each of you. That depends. Billy does a lot with mission. Cam and I pretty much take care of a lot of things administrative-wise, the administrative division, things of that nature. Bob Ayala, Charles Davenport, even our staff. Robin is staff to nominations. Marcia is staff to CPM, and things of that nature. So all of us are here to help you. If you don't know who your staff person is, you will find that out. And some of the information Billy is going to give to me. Well, Billy has given it to me, so I'll give it to you about our committee. So feel free to please contact your staff. Now, I will say for the most part that the committees are run by you as chairpersons. We are there to support you. There are a few cases where the staff kind of leads things and leads it when it needs to be. If things are dragging, then the staff person will kind of help out and lead it. But we are here to support you. And please never be afraid to give us a call if you need some help. And so we are always here to support you in your role. As was said before, the staff is not the presbytery, you are the presbytery. And one of the reasons why we are gathered this evening is that hopefully that you'll be a spokesperson for the presbytery, good and bad, and you will hear both. So I want to make sure that you are the first line people to make sure not only that we are carrying out the mission of Christ, but also to be the example of the hands of feet in Christ here within the Presbytery of West North Carolina as well. So I want to let you know that and know that we will continue to pray for you and to walk with you in this journey. Are there any, don't forget, each of you should have received an email already with the agenda and the evaluation. There's a Survey Monkey evaluation. There's a link. There's only a few questions. If there's a few narrative points, narrative sections, please make sure you fill that out and send that back to us. And we will compile those and talk about when we're going to do this again. Not if, when we're going to do this again. And so I think this is very much needed and how we can kind of reshape what we're doing in different ways. I also do want to remind you, do not forget about our leadership event with Steve Eason that Barbara has been working on. And so there are 2 dates for that, one in Newton and one in, where's the other one, Barbara? Gastonia?
Franklin,
Franklin, one in Franklin
Newton and Franklin.
Newton and Franklin. And so you will hear more information about that as well. So we hope that pastors and elders will be able to attend those, because we think Steve Eason has a lot of gifts to give to the church. And some of you may have already used some of his material already. And he is a member of this presbytery. So, and there are many good things that are coming out of this presbytery. So continue to keep us in your prayers. Any other questions for the good of the order this evening? Any comments you would like to make? If you have something bad, it wasn't my fault. So I just want to let you know that. But anyway, and I know in a sense this is kind of fast, but we want to make sure that at least you have a little bit of your feet on the ground as you take on these responsibilities as you go forth.
Just
Thanks,
thank you
Dalton.
guys.
Thanks to all the staff for doing this. It's very good.
Oh, I think Sue was trying to say something. I think she just put her thumb up. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I will not prolong you. We can leave early. But is there anyone who would like to close us with a word of prayer this evening?
All right.
Okay.
You got me?
I got you, Sue.
All right. And I keep hitting the wrong thing. Okay. Please pray with me. Gracious God, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come together and to communicate with one another, to help us move forward within this presbytery, and to include as many people as possible in the presbytery to make it a truly functioning and working body. We thank you for this time to get to know one another and to identify with each other. And we ask you to be with us as we go in our daily lives and on our way this evening. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for being a part of it. Those who are staff, Barbara and Billy and Cam, just stay back for a few seconds. But all the rest of you, I hope you have a good night. And please know that we are here to support you, and prayers be with you as you take on these leadership roles for 2022. And please do not be afraid to reach out to us if you need to.
Amen.
Thank you all.
Peace
Good
be
to
with you.
Bye.
Peace.
Good night.